Okay, so here we've got a list of sales data in this example. As you can see, we've got a date of the sale, as well as who the customer it was, what region the customer belonged to, what product was sold. So here we've got muffins that are sold, and what product category it belongs to. So muffins, for example, belongs to the bread and bakery category. Further down, we've got rice that sits in the cereal category, tomatoes that's in the vegetables category. And for each of these, we've got a sale amount. So what is the value of the sale? So think of each of these as a sale that happened for a particular product to a particular customer. Now, we may have some questions about this data. So for example, there's a lot of different line items here, and it's got data for each transaction. Now, if we had a question that said, what were the total sales, for example, for the northern region, how would we actually obtain that? Or if we wanted to know what is the total sales for all bread and bakery items within the northern region. So for example, this particular item would fall into that total, northern region bread and bakery. This particular item is also northern region bread and bakery. So you can see there would be multiple items, and if we wanted to sum up only those particular items, how would we go about doing that? Now, the one tool that's very often used to do this is pivot tables, which is covered in the advanced course. But what we're going to use here is what we call database functions to allow us to pull out that data as well. So what I'm going to do to show you how the database functions work is we're just going to insert some blank rows on the top. And the reason that I'm doing that is I just want to keep everything on one sheet. Let's zoom in. I'm just going to zoom to selection so it becomes a bit bigger and it's a bit easier to read. Okay, so the way it basically works, let's assume we were looking at northern region sales, right? So we've got to actually create a criteria table. So I'm just going to copy the headings of the ones that we need. So let's say under region, we're going to want northern region. So I'm just copying and pasting the criteria for the sales that we're looking at. So let's assume that's the only criteria. Region has to be northern region. So you've got to create your criteria in a similar table. And as we go through different examples, you'll see how this actually works. So the database functions all begin with the word D, right? So dsum is the one that we're going to start looking at. And you can see that it says here that this adds all the numbers in the field column of records in the database that match the conditions that you specify. So if I click on the open bracket here, it says where is the database? Now the database is effectively all of our data over here. So I'm just going to click here and drag towards the end. Then I'm going to keep my Control Shift and down key in to highlight everything right to the bottom. So you can see there's a total that was inserted there, but we won't use that. We just want all the actual line items or the data rows themselves to be included, as well as the header row, right? So there's a header row. I'm going to press the F4 key to do absolute referencing over here. And then we're going to put comma, and it's saying, okay, what field do we want to use? So the field that we want to sum up is the sales amount field. So I'm going to click on that cell, F11, to say this is the field that we're going to sum up because we're using a database sum feature. And then it says what criteria. So in terms of this whole list of rows, which rows do we want to sum up? So we've got to tell it the criteria, and that's where we highlight this particular range over there to say that the criteria is that the region should be the northern region. And I'm going to click on close and hit enter, and now this basically is giving us the sum of the northern region. Now how can we go about checking that? Let's have a look, right? So if I'm just going to put in here dsum, okay, I'm going to use the auto filter, which is also covered in the advanced course, but let's go data and select the auto filter there. So I've just turned on the filtering, and I'm just going to filter down on the northern region only. So we're going to deselect all and select the northern region and say okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to show you that if we highlight all of these cells, right, that's only in our northern region. You can see only the northern region ones are showing, and it's going to be summing them up here at the bottom right. Remember, in the status bar, it sums the selected cells, and you can see that this is 449640, and therefore we know that this is actually correct. So in terms of checking that, that's how we can check it. The other thing you can see on this particular listing here, if we highlighted all of these cells here, right, there's also 39 of them. So that means that there were 39 different sales in the northern region. You can see these are all northern region here. So if we use the D count formula, so the D count formula tells us how many line items there are in the database that meet the criteria. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this exact formula here, right? I use the Control C to copy it after highlighting it, and selecting it, and I'm going to press Control V. So as you can see, it's the identical formula right now. But what I'm going to do, just to make things quicker, is I'm going to change the dsum over here to dcount. So dcount works exactly the same way as the dsum, but it gives us the number of items. So you can see this tells us that it's now 39 items. I'm going to actually remove this filter, so we're going to go clear filter. So you can see there's obviously a lot more than 39 items, altogether. Let's just delete that total there. There's obviously, it's going up to row 165, so there's well over 100, but the northern region itself has 39. What's really nice about the database functions is that if I change any of the criteria, it'll automatically change these values. So for example, if I typed in your eastern region, right, and I hit enter, it updates those for the eastern region, so you can immediately see how that changes. Now let's take it even further. Let's say we didn't only want to look at the region, but we also wanted to look at the product category as part of our criteria. So if I click on this product category and bring that in over here, right, so we've now got the product category there. And if we now want to say, okay, we're looking at the bread and bakery category, I'll paste that over here. Now you'll notice nothing has changed at this point in time, because if I hit F2 to edit, the criteria is still only looking at these two cells. So I've got to click and drag it to extend it. You can see this third argument to the function needs to be the criteria, and that needed to be expanded to include the product category. So I'll hit enter, and let's also expand this here across and hit enter. So you can see that now is actually only 7 items. It tells us that there's 7 items of the eastern region in the bread and bakery product category, and that's summing up to 49,930. So let's actually check that. So if we go here and we do a filter on the eastern region, so we're doing eastern region filtering. So these are all the sales in the eastern region, and we'll do an additional filter for bread and bakery under the product category. So if we go under product category and we deselect everything and select bread and bakery, you can see these are the 7 items that the dcount is referring to. You can see there's 7 of them over here, and if we sum up those 7 items, you can see the total there by highlighting it is 49,930, and that's exactly what the dsum is telling us. There's also a third function that we'll just go through, which is daverage, and that's simply the average of the line items that meet the criteria. And what we'll do here is we'll, instead of just copying and pasting and then changing the name of the function, let's just insert it for practice from the word go. So over here, we'll click on the insert function, and then under all, I'll just type in DAV until I find it, double click on it. This opens it up here. So remember, the database is everything. Actually, before I did that, let me remove these. It's actually important to remove the filters that we've got, right? So I'm going to go to the data tab, and in fact, let's just remove this filter altogether. Let's go back over here and now go and insert that function, and we just remember we type in DAVE, so DAVR, let's go, and then there we go, double click on it. So the database is going to be this particular thing over here. I'm going to use the Control Shift down to go right to the bottom, so you can see it's highlighted all of the rows. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say which field are we looking at. Now, one of the things I want to point out is I could have just clicked and say it's a sales amount field. There's a few ways you can put in which field you want. You can click on the field name and put that. That's probably the easiest thing to do. I could have also typed in the word sale amount over here, right, like that in quotation marks, because it's a text. And then for the criteria, we remember we're highlighting this area over there. And you can see that the average is already showing us it will be 7132. And the final way for the field, instead of actually typing in sale amount, or remember we said we could have clicked on that cell, which gives it the value of sale amount, we can also count which column it is in the database. So this is column 1, this is column 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So column 6 is what we want. So if we put in 6 over there, that will also work. And if I say OK, you can see that's basically giving us the average of these. And we can actually test that, because the average would simply be, if you take that amount, which is the total sum, divided by the number of them, you can see that also gives you the answer to the average. So by doing the dsum and the dcount, we've just done a double check to see that the daverage function as we've got it here is working correctly. Okay, so we'll basically wrap this up by showing you the dmax function. So dmax is basically the maximum number. So I'm just going to go into the cell, highlight all of it, Control C to copy, go into the cell, escape, go into the cell below, double click to get into the edit mode, and press Control V. So we're basically pasting exactly the same function, but instead of putting this D average, we're going to change that word average to max, so it becomes D max, and hit enter, because everything else remains the same. And what this says to us is that of these particular transactions, the maximum value was 24,360. And let's just go and verify that by going to our filter again, so data filter, and then let's actually filter on the Eastern region. Again, we go and filter on the Eastern region, and we go and filter on the bread and bakery category. So let's do that, and this brings us, and you can see that of all these transactions over here, 24,360 is the largest number, and that's what the Dmax is finding. So remember, again, the strength of this is that one can actually simply change that. So for example, if I wanted to, let's clear this filter, if I wanted to look at the Western region, I could actually say, let's give me the Western region, and not just for bread and bakery. Let's actually clear out this filter over here, but let's assume that we were looking at the vegetables. So if I put vegetables over there, so under product category, the numbers now provide us the sum of all the sales for the Western region of vegetables is going to be 39,300. There were 4 different sales. The average value of the sales was 9,825, and the single largest sale was 16,660.